sorry, I forgot to tell you. I actually changed my direct deposit account. I was getting anxious because it was payday, but no paycheck had been deposited. It turns out that my husband had changed the direct deposit account without my consent. That being said, my husband's salary is small to begin with, and I am the one covering most of the living expenses. Still, it seems like he should be able to figure out that life would become more difficult without his salary. I feel angry towards my husband for forgetting to tell me such an important thing. After asking him why he changed the direct deposit account, I decided to end my marriage to this man. I'm Emma, 31 years old, and a working housewife. I live in an apartment with my husband John. John is 5 years older than me, 36 years old. We met at a mixer, and at that time I thought John looked like a mature man, and I felt that if we got married, he would protect me, so we started dating. It was my bad for choosing him based on my imagination, but he is so devious that he kept that secret from me until we got married. John is the type who can't control his desires. And if he finds a watch he likes during a date, he buys it right away, even if it costs $2,000. John says, I'm a man who can adapt quickly to the new age, so I haven't paid in cash for the past 10 years. He rarely carries cash, and all payments are made by credit card. He has been living this way for the past 10 years, constantly being chased by these payments. Seeing him pay with a credit card, I used to think he was a cool and mature man. I wish I could go back in time and slap myself. Upon getting married, John and I decided to manage our money by consolidating our salaries into a single joint account. At first, we thought about giving him an allowance, but John only wanted to use a credit card, so we decided to limit the allowance to $250 per month. However, when I actually checked our cash flow, it became clear that we couldn't spend even $250. This is because the payment amount with John's credit card was $800 every month. In fact, he was using revolving credit with a monthly fixed payment of $800. As for our monthly income, John's take-home pay is $1,300, while mine is $2,400. When considering our $800 monthly expenditure, life gets a bit tough. Contemplating what the future holds, I was too afraid to splurge. Yet, John keeps gallivanting around as usual, still spending lavishly with his credit card. As a newlywed, I was surprised to discover that John's take-home pay was lower than what a fresh graduate at my company earns. Before we got married, he claimed to work at a fairly large company, and I took his words for it. Sure enough, he wasn't lying about working at the company I had heard about. However, he was working part-time at a restaurant run by this large corporation. Moreover, it was a high-end restaurant, and John was always in a suit serving customers. Previously, when we met after work, he was in a cool suit, which completely fooled me. It was unbelievable that someone like him has a credit card limit of $5,000, which should be decreased. Nothing in this world makes sense. For our wedding, my parents gave us money, and until we got married, we never discussed finances, so I didn't know that John had so little money. Although it's too late to repent, if I ever had known this would happen, I wish I had talked about money with him before marriage and asked to see his payslips. Then, about 6 months after we got married, my mother-in-law, Cherry, came to the house without prior notice. It was a holiday, but John usually works on weekends and holidays, so I greeted her alone. My parents-in-laws are relatively wealthy, as my father-in-law runs a company. By the way, it seems that my brother-in-law will be the one to take over the company, being trained by his father, whereas John is given the freedom to live his own life. Cherry, who adores John, continues to spoil him even now that he's grown up. Oh, what a shabby apartment. It's not right for John to live in such a cheap apartment. I wonder what you were thinking, Emma. I plan to move to a larger and better apartment after getting married, but circumstances have changed. I was about to say it's because of your son, but I swallowed it down with a forced smile. The apartment we live in now is the one I had been living in before we got married, and John just moved in. Actually, John and I had once decided on an apartment to move into after an apartment tour, and I asked him to handle the contract. Nevertheless, he didn't make the contract for some reason. I had already proceeded with the cancellation of this apartment, but I was informed during our honeymoon that the apartment was not contracted. So, after returning from the trip, I rushed to recontract the current apartment. I suppose the reason he didn't contract the apartment is probably due to financial reasons. Therefore, living in the same apartment isn't Cherry's business. Yet, John is the center of her universe, so it would never be acceptable for her. Honestly, I can't understand why my son married such a penniless woman. Cherry often muttered this, as if she were talking to herself. Her attitude really annoyed me. Then, I was at the end of my patience. I let out a sarcastic remark. Well, if John made a good salary, we'd be living in a nice apartment by now, wouldn't we? What is that supposed to mean? Are you implying it's John's fault? I don't know if you're counting on his income, but as soon as you got married, you have no right to meddle in your husband's salary. I won't give you a dime of our inheritance. Unfortunately for you, I make enough to live on my own. I didn't marry for money. I married because I love John. As for your inheritance, it has nothing to do with me. I retorted with a strong tone to my mother-in-law. This seemed to further annoy her, and she glared at me. You say that, but I wonder what the truth is. Anyway, don't rely too much on John. He's delicate. I can't bear the thought of him being handbagged. After spitting out these words, she hurriedly left. It seemed she had come to see John and didn't want to talk to me any further. After she left, I thought back on what I had said. I told her that I married John because I loved him, but to be honest, I'm not sure if I feel the same way now. After various lies came to light, the dependability I had felt in John after our marriage had completely disappeared. He's reckless with money and somehow overestimates his own abilities. It's painful to watch. What I thought was cool about him now seems incredibly lame. Despite feeling this way, can I still say I love him? Then, a year after our marriage, an incident occurred. John's salary stopped being deposited into our joint account. Could it be that he quit his part-time job and is hiding it? Then, where does he go every day? I started to worry. I immediately confronted him when he came home. John, where have you been? Where? Well, at work. But our joint account hasn't received your salary. Did you actually quit your job? At this, he looked puzzled and then started to laugh. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Actually, I changed my direct deposit account. Changed it? What do you mean? I've decided to stop making payments with my credit card. What? What do you mean? I realized that as long as I keep using my credit card, my debt won't decrease but will actually increase. Considering the interest I'm currently paying, it seems wasteful. You can continue paying the credit card. Once the payment is complete, there won't be any interest. Honestly, I couldn't help but feel, what the heck are you talking about? He was bugging me. And what good is it to me? Well, you won't have to pay $800 every month once the payment is over, right? What? That's your debt. You have to face the music. I can't. That means I can only spend $300 a month, right? I can't live on that, so thanks in advance. Whether he felt uncomfortable around my anger or not, John just said what he wanted to say and then hurriedly left the house. Why did I marry such a loser? Everything was a mistake. I, who wanted to divorce immediately, decided to take action. But at that time, I still lacked knowledge. I filled my section of the divorce papers and asked John for a divorce, but he refused. Emma, you can't just get a divorce that easily. We need to discuss it. And besides, if I don't agree, the divorce won't happen. There's also the option of divorce mediation, but in that case, we need to discuss it in court, which takes time. And again, without my consent, a divorce won't happen. Are you still going to file for a divorce? He laughed, as if to say that there was no way a divorce could happen. I know why John doesn't want to divorce me. He doesn't want to lose me, his cash cow. As long as he's with me, he can use all of his salary as an allowance. He probably thinks it's more convenient to be supported by me, but that's nothing but pain for me. Not only does he not contribute money, but he also doesn't do any household chores like cleaning or laundry. Despite this, the fact that I can't just divorce him easily is ridiculous. Do I have to live with this person for the rest of my life? While being overwhelmed with a sense of despair, I spent my days busy with housework and work. When was the last time I spent money on myself? Before marriage, I had many hobbies and spent money for myself, enjoying life. Yet, do I have to continue being John's cash cow forever? He's always smiling without a care in the world. Just seeing his face makes me unbearably uncomfortable. I've started to avoid him and keep my distance. 6 months after I first brought up divorce, my mother-in-law came to our apartment again. It was a holiday, but John happened to be off and was at home. I work from home on my company tasks, so I was busy even on my day off. I thought Cherry just came to see John, and I planned to say hello and go back to work. However, the moment I showed my face, she pointed at me and started shouting, "You! What are you up to? What do you think you're doing with my John?" What? What's the sudden outburst? I heard it from John. You've been cold to him because he doesn't earn much. How dare you, who only earns $1,300 a month, criticize John, who earns $3,000 a month? When I glared at him, wondering how we got to this point, he was shifting his gaze around, looking flustered. Apparently, he had been complaining about me to his mother and embellishing the story. Just like he had lied to me before our marriage, he seemed to be deceiving her this time. She kept complaining to me, desperately trying to defend him. For starters, your job isn't much compared to John's. You're said to be living a luxurious life all by yourself without giving him an allowance. Me? Living luxuriously? Alone? When I looked at him, he had his index finger on his lips, making a gesture as if to say, "Be quiet, don't say anything." He seemed to be in tears, quite flustered. He must not have expected her to barge into our home after his embellished complaints. You're taking advantage of John's kindness, and that is the worst. Cherry said this, directing her gaze at John. Then he said to me, "That's right, just get out." As if he had no choice but to agree with his mother, he made an apologetic gesture behind her when she looked at me. Seeing his gesture, I nodded and said something I didn't mean. "I see, I understand. I guess a woman like me wasn't right for John. I'm sorry, I'll leave right away." "Oh, good, you understand. But it's fine. I just wanted you to change your attitude towards John, so you don't have to leave." "Is that so? Then I'll change my attitude. But from now on, I'll be watching to make sure you don't mistreat him again." Feeling satisfied after saying what she wanted to say, she left cheerfully. However, I was left with a feeling of emptiness, a sense of sadness, and void. I had been sacrificing myself to pay off John's debts. Why did I have to feel this way? Tears started to well up in my eyes out of emptiness. He noticed me crying and started to panic. Emma, what's wrong? Are you okay? Does it look like I'm okay to you, John? No, I mean, sorry. I guess I exaggerated too much, or my mom misunderstood. But I think if we show her we're getting along well, she'll be reassured. Let's go together and show her. Yeah, I have some work left to do, so I'll get back to it. Saying that and returning to my room, I opened my laptop and started researching law firms. Work was secondary at this point. Thinking it was important to listen to other people's opinions, I explained my situation and asked people on the internet what I should do next. Then I was able to receive various solutions that I hadn't thought of. I should have taken action like this from the start. I couldn't help but blame myself. If I had been able to get a divorce faster, I might not have had to endure harsh words from my mother-in-law. However, I can't keep on regretting. I need to think about the future. I never want to be under the control of John again. Deciding this in my heart, I started preparing for a divorce. Since then, I have been living my usual peaceful life, not showing any signs of anger or letting John realize that I was preparing for a divorce. When John wasn't around, I requested a quote from a moving company. I've already decided on the new house where I'll be living. I used to live in this cheap apartment to save for marriage, but I don't need to do that anymore. By raising the rent by about $180, there were many apartments with better environments. I can't think about getting remarried for a while, so I chose an apartment where I can keep pets. Living with a pet would probably be more healing than living with John. Then the long-awaited moving day arrived. Since I had secretly sent small items to my new home, all I needed the movers for were the heavy furniture and appliances. I'm completely fed up with John, who doesn't even realize that most of my stuff has disappeared from the house. When I was busy moving around, John asked me what was going on. You seem to be busy. Is something wrong? Well, I'm thinking about moving. Wait, I haven't heard anything about this. Of course, I didn't tell you, but you don't need to worry about anything, John. I'm the only one moving out. Only you? What do you mean? I'm confused. I'm leaving this place. By the way, I'm the one who signed the contract for this apartment, so I've canceled it. So you better find a new place soon. John finally understood the situation and clung to me. Emma, I'm sorry. It's because I lied to my mom, right? I won't lie again. Please forgive me. This isn't about forgiveness. You always put your debts on me and lied about working for a large corporation. And you lied to your mother and blamed it all on me. There's nothing good about being married to you, John. I can't stand it anymore. I'm going to get a divorce. I'll have my lawyer contact you later. John just stood there, panicked, unable to respond. Then he suddenly started calling someone. I wonder what he wants to do. It's not like anything will change even if he consults with someone now. About 10 minutes after John was on the phone with someone, his mother arrived at the house. When she saw the movers carrying out my belongings, she looked surprised. Emma, who are these people? What's going on here? I don't feel like explaining to her in this situation. From her attitude, trying to blame me, I can tell that John hasn't told her the truth. It would be a waste of time for me to bother explaining. I'm getting a divorce from your son and I'm leaving this house. Please ask John for more details. Ask him about his job, his salary, his debt. And after you find out everything, I expect an apology. What's that? You're trying to blame John when it's all your fault? I was ready to forgive you if you apologized and changed your attitude. Wait a minute. I completely ignored her. The loading seems to have been completed. Only John's stuff was left in the house. I picked up my bag and headed for the entrance. You better leave by the end of this month, I said to John in disgust and left the house. I got in the car, started the engine, and As I was leaving, John and his mother started chasing after me. It's impossible to keep up with a car on foot. As expected, the two of them got their feet tangled and tripped, falling at the same time. It was so funny that I burst out laughing. It was hilarious watching the people who had tormented me run in vain and clumsily fall, even though they knew they couldn't catch up. It's been a while since I've laughed this loudly. From now on, I've decided to live my life for myself. Afterward, John apparently told his mother the truth, and she called me to apologize. I'm really sorry for what I have done. It's all because I didn't listen to you properly that this happened. I'm sorry. Could you please give me your new address so I can apologize sincerely? I should have told you the truth much earlier, so I don't think it's entirely your fault. But I don't want you guys to know my address, so I can't give it to you. I see. If you had told me about John sooner, you might not have had to divorce. I didn't tell you because I thought it would be a waste of time. Even if I told you, you would just call John a little and try to make peace, right? Seemingly unable to stand my defiant attitude, she changed her tone and retorted. How dare you? Don't get too cocky just because I'm being a bit humble. Did you just call to vent your frustration? It seems like there's no need for discussion. It's a waste of time, so I'll hang up now. After saying that, I hung up the phone and blocked her number. Later on, I asked my lawyer, and I was able to divorce John successfully. When I presented evidence that John not only didn't cover living expenses, but also forced me to pay his credit card bills, the court immediately granted a divorce on the grounds of the husband's fault. Due to the numerous burdens he had imposed on me so far, I was entitled to all of our marital assets, although John originally had a right to part of the assets. The father-in-law, who had never been involved before, found out about John's behavior during the divorce drama and was furious. He then ordered that all the trouble he had caused should be paid to me. In addition to that, his father also transferred the revolving payments that I had been paying for John. I thought I couldn't claim the revolving part since it's shared property between couples. It was a blessing in disguise. For this, I am grateful for his father's kindness. And it seems that Cherry, who had been covering up for John and oppressing me, was also fiercely scolded by her husband. She had always been lenient with John and raised him with favoritism. After her husband told her to live with John, she began to live with him in a rundown apartment similar to the one I used to live in. Finally, it seems, she understood the hardship I had been through, and she called me from a public phone to apologize while crying, but that doesn't mean I'm going to forgive her. She should experience the hardship of living with John for a while. As for John, it seems he had exceeded his credit card limit and was banned from using it by his mother. His salary is entirely managed by her, and he is reportedly on a monthly allowance of $80. Even so, he was unable to break his spendthrift habits and apparently borrowed money from a consumer finance company, further sinking into debt. And finally, it seems Cherry is about to give up on John too. I can't help but feel sorry for the people lending money to John. As for me, I moved to a pet-friendly apartment and got a cute dog. The dog is a smart one that listens well to what I say. When we go for walks, he runs around cheerfully, which is also good exercise for me. It feels like I've gained a new family member, and my life has become enriched all at once. My parents come over to my apartment to see the dog, and I've made friends through the dog. My everyday life is so much happier than when I was married to John. For now, I plan to continue enjoying these peaceful and fun days.
I'm Madison, a 45-year-old divorcee who had sworn off marriage for good. The reason I was fed up with marriage was because I was exploited as a caregiver by my former in-laws during my previous marriage. After my first marriage, I obtained a certification as a home helper, now known as a certified nursing assistant. I was very close to my grandmother and wanted to take proper care of her when she became bedridden, which is why I pursued the certification. However, upon learning this, my then-husband's parents told me right after my grandmother's funeral, "Now it's your turn to take care of our grandparents." They said this while I was still in tears from losing my grandmother. I was appalled by their insensitivity, but indeed, from the very next day, I was burdened with taking care of my former husband's grandparents all by myself. Despite appealing to my ex-husband, he did nothing to help, saying, "You're the wife, so it's only natural," and didn't even try to mediate with his parents. I endured this for about 2 years but finally couldn't take it anymore and managed to divorce him with the help of a lawyer. That's why, after the divorce, I never dated men who had living grandparents or parents, and I turned down all matchmaking proposals. Having acquired multiple certifications in caregiving, I was confident that I could get a job in a nursing home and support myself if needed. It was Tom, a colleague of mine, who approached me. We worked in the same department, so we had many opportunities to talk, and I gradually became attracted to Tom's bright and refreshing personality. However, unfortunately, he had parents to care for, so when he asked me out, I explained my situation with my divorce and turned him down. But Tom kept saying, "I will never let you go through the hardship of caregiving," and trusting his words, I accepted his proposal at the age of 40. Life with Tom was smooth sailing at first. He was a top-performing sales employee, and even if I quit my job as he wished, we had enough savings to live comfortably. Though we were at an age where having children was not an option, we thought we could enjoy our retirement just the two of us. But our dream shattered when Tom was forced to resign due to office politics. It was a huge shock for him, and he lost his motivation to work. With him shutting himself in his room all day, I decided to re-enter the workforce. However, finding a full-time job for a housewife over 40 with a gap in her resume was difficult. Even if I found one, the pay was at best around $1,500 a month in this area. While I was contemplating what to do, I saw a job posting for a caregiving facility. I knew that caregiving jobs were hard, but some places offered between $2,000 to $2,500, depending on the location and position. Thinking I would persevere until Tom could work again, I decided to take the job at the caregiving facility. The work was more challenging than I had imagined. I had to keep an eye on dozens of residents, assist them with eating, changing, bathing, toileting, and come up with recreational activities. I felt like I was running around all day, and I lost 11 pounds in a month, often experiencing fainting spells due to anemia. Naturally, I had no energy left to take care of Tom after returning home. I would almost always collapse upon getting home, and eventually, he began to complain, saying, "Madison, you smell." Dealing with the residents' excrement was a daily task. Since food often got spit out due to swallowing difficulties, the smell inevitably clung to me. After being pointed out by my husband, I tried to take a shower immediately after coming home, doing my best to prevent his mood from worsening further. But one day, Tom said, "Can't you find a better job?" and I was infuriated. Day in and day out, I take care of the elderly, have night shifts, and all for a mere take-home pay of just over $2,000. It's ridiculous. I used to earn twice that without night shifts or weekends. And, lately you've had a strong smell of aging. Is it the smell of old people? Or is it you? How could he say such things when I was working hard to support him? I take pride in my work. I was also furious that he belittled my profession as a caregiver. Then go ahead and earn twice as much. If you do, I'll quit my job right now, I snapped back, making him turn red with anger. How can you be so cold? I'm suffering here, and you're telling me to work. From then on, our exchanges became a series of tit-for-tat, and we hardly spoke to each other afterwards. However, I wanted to avoid divorce at all costs. Being from a small town, my divorce had already become the talk of the town in a not-so-flattering way. If I became a two-time divorcee, I could only imagine what would be said. I didn't want to cause my parents any more distress than I already had. Tom felt the same. Having been pushed out of his job on top of being a divorcee, he was seen as an unfortunate man by those around us. And if he became a two-time divorcee on top of that. Since we both had our interests in mind, we came to an unspoken agreement to somewhat reconcile. and Tom decided to start working part-time at a delivery warehouse nearby, just 2 days a week. He complained non-stop about not being suited for physical labor but reluctantly agreed when I asked him to at least earn his own spending money. During this time, a celebration for my father-in-law's 77th birthday was planned. I heard that Tom's sister always took charge of family gatherings, so I contacted her to say I wouldn't be attending. I would be returning home around 9 a.m. after a night shift, and the celebration was starting at 11 a.m., leaving no time for sleep. I thought it would be a nuisance if I attended in such a state. When she said to me, "Don't you realize you're the eldest son's wife?" So I asked, what does that have to do with anything? It's highly relevant. Your in-laws, especially being the wife of the heir, should be your top priority. Skipping it just because you're up all night? That's outrageous, she yelled at me. I explained that the caregiving facility was short-staffed and there was no one to cover for me, but she completely ignored that. She even went as far as to say, just like my brother said. You're the type to kick him while he's down. Making him work and do physical labor without a second thought. Insensitive people don't care about family. And to think, you work with old, smelly, and dirty people. Only someone as thick-skinned and insensitive as you could handle that kind of job. She hung up on me before I could retort in anger. On the day of the celebration, Tom dragged me along, and I attended in a half-asleep state. Immediately, his sister blurted out, "Wow, just like my brother said, Madison really does stink," waking me up. To accuse someone like that at a celebration was utterly disrespectful. And Tom added, "Doesn't she?" I can't tell if it's her or the residents from the facility, but the smell doesn't even go away with a bath anymore. Yeah, that's the worst. They were cheerfully chatting about such an awful topic. Feeling disgusted, my mother-in-law said, "Well, she's going to be taking care of us someday, so let's not say anything too harsh." Then my sister-in-law said, "Oh, right, she's a professional. With Madison here, we're set for our old age," to which the in-laws agreed. Infuriated, I asked, "Why is that?" "Huh? Because you're the eldest son's wife and a caregiving pro, so it's already decided," she laughed. "That's not decided at all. Besides, a daughter-in-law is not obligated to take care of her in-laws," I replied with a smile. Seeing their puzzled faces, I explained, "It's determined by Article 877 of the Civil Code. Only direct blood relatives and siblings, meaning people who are blood-related to the in-laws, have the duty to support each other. And if someone who is obligated to provide care neglects this duty, they can be held accountable," I added, causing a stir among everyone present. However, this duty mentioned in the law refers to financial support. So, providing for living expenses or paying for nursing home fees suffices. If that's not possible, then daily care is also acceptable, I elaborated carefully. Having been forced to care for my former in-laws in my previous marriage, I thoroughly researched caregiving qualifications and laws after my divorce. Tom then blanched, saying, "I don't have any money." Then, as a duty of a biological child, why don't you take care of them daily or ask your sister for financial support? His sister then panicked, "No way, that's a joke. I mean, I have to take care of my husband's parents." "So, you have no obligation to take care of your husband's parents. Please explain that to them and ask them to take care of their own parents," I said with a smile. That's when my in-laws, who had been quiet, chimed in. "Madison, you're a professional caregiver, right? Taking care of us should be easy for you." "Yeah, it's only proper for you to take care of us rather than strangers' parents." I was infuriated by their words. "I work full-time. It's impossible." Then, my mother-in-law suggested nonchalantly that I should just quit my job at the facility. "And what about mine and Tom's living expenses? Are you saying you'll cover those?" When I mentioned that I earn about $2,200 at the facility and that they would have to compensate me that amount if I quit, they both fell silent, exchanging glances. However, Tom and his sister were far from convinced. "Do you think that kind of reasoning will work? Being married to the eldest son, it's only natural for you to take care of his parents," they argued. As if theirs wasn't the flawed logic. Worse yet, Tom denied ever promising not to burden me with caregiving duties before we got married. That's when my anger exploded. "You know very well how hard caregiving is, having seen me work every day. It's physically demanding, it stinks, and it's stressful. You and your sister laughed at me, calling elderly care dirty and smelly. You expect me to do all that for free while neither of you lift a finger. I yelled at the top of my lungs, my voice echoing through the room. At that, both of them looked down, their faces showing guilt. But after a while, Tom shamelessly suggested that when his parents needed care, I should get them into the facility I work at for a cheap price. That's impossible. Besides, our place is a special nursing home with a long wait list. There's almost no chance of getting in. I coldly dismissed the idea. So, if your parents ever need caregiving, I'll be counting on Tom, his sister, and her children to take the lead, thank you very much. I said before leaving the dinner early and going home. I went straight to the city hall to pick up divorce papers, signed them upon returning home, left them on the living room table. Took only a few personal items, and left the house. Afterward, the dinner party reportedly turned chaotic. Even though Tom's parents didn't yet need care, he and his sister started arguing over who should take responsibility. The father blamed the mother for their children's poor upbringing, and the mother accused Tom of choosing the wrong wife. Even Tom's sister's husband, her daughter, and other relatives got involved, causing a huge uproar. After a bit of turmoil, the divorce was finalized, and Tom, unable to support himself, reluctantly moved back in with his parents. Trying to escape caregiving duties, he registered on a dating site exclusive to nurses, desperately reaching out to anyone. At over 40 and only working a part-time job twice a week, he truly is a hopeless case. I became a 2-time divorcee, but I have no regrets. It happened just when my father received a Care Level 2 certification, so I decided to return home and help my mother take care of him.